Excellent. All right. So this paper is part of the continuing anthology, Dungeons, Dragons, and Digital Denizens. It came out in February, which I guess is the reason why Evan hit me up and said, please come. And I said, yes, please, thank you. So thank you very much for putting this together. This is excellent. First of all, this project really isn't about Fallout or post-apocalyptic video games. What this paper is trying to do is rethink the player-game relationship, specifically through the concept of the post-apocalypse, and then turn to a specific reading of the post-apocalyptic game in light of this relationship. So I'll get to like the actual game. I do have something to say about it later on. But very specifically, this paper is trying to reinstate the importance of form in a discipline that seems to be, at least to me, dominated by mostly the study of content. So this paper is really trying to look at form, and then content, of course, is there as well, but reinstate the importance there. So this is the most simple model of communication that I could think of. It's Shannon and Weaver. The sender, message, receiver, you've probably all seen it, even if you aren't in communication studies. It's like about 50 years old. So you've got, a sender and some message, and then if it doesn't get there, it's because of some sort of miscommunication. There's some sort of noise or disturbance in the system. This comes from the understanding of communication as communicare, that it implies that the message itself is being shared, and the goal of kind of understanding may eventually be realized. Branko Chang, who is actually here in the audience, argues there is something else that gets in between these two systems, something other than just noise. Commonplace narratives of communication presupposes that the subject directly sends a message to the other. The system, however, is outside of us rather than in us, and therefore we must instead give the communicative task over to something in between us and other. There's a mediator, a medium by which communication operates. This medium we have given ourselves over to is communication itself. Communication does not happen between two, but instead communication itself is a medium in which we exchange messages. So Shannon and Weaver's diagram isn't so bad if we take that line and kind of pretend that it was a collapsed circle, just kind of turn it on its side. So communication for Chang is a, quote, interplay between self and other, between that which stays the same and appears to the former as different, end quote. Effectively redefining communication as an exchange between two or more elements that are attempting to make sense of something other than themselves. In this perspective, the subject considers itself as a self, and then therefore familiar, and considers the other as different and not understood. Communication, therefore, attempts to domesticate the, quote, alien into the customary. It brings things closer to make them familiar. Chang refers to this as the postal principle. So mediations can be seen as the form of relays. Each separate medium affects the postal message, carried open like a postcard, modified along the way by the systems in place. So if the player subject is exploring a post-apocalypse, the question that first arises is, what does this post-apocalypse consist of, especially now through our understanding about this postal system of exchange? The Christian vernacular end times is the temporal consideration of post as after the event is the common sense approach to apocalypse. Oops, there we go. Although Fallout and Wasteland seem to mime these understandings, both of these terms remain less than helpful when considering the significance of the post-apocalyptic tale. From the Greek apocalypsis, to uncover or reveal, apocalypse, quote, apocalypse means revelation of truth and unveiling. A final destruction, a final revelation. The truth must be absolute and total, or as Derrida reminds us, no truth, no apocalypse. As for consideration of the post-apocalypse therefore cannot simply be temporal. Rather than referring to the root of the prefix meaning after, thinking of post in the Latin positum, the etymological root for post in the postal system, refers to placing something spatially rather than temporally. The post-apocalyptic adventure is that which places the subject, in this case the player, at a distance from fulfillment of apocalypse, of revelation, and of truth, allows for perspective. In this manner, we can never actually be apocalyptic, only post. When the player approaches the apocalypse as post, which is already in a virtual temporal projection from their current situation, she is not approaching it as after an event, then as revelation of event. Instead, she's simply approaching that revelation, allowing for the possibility of the revelation to come. The avatar here becomes not just an embodiment of the player, but as a node in the communicative structure, a sort of extension that situates a player in a different manner. To do this, we need to think otherwise about the role that mediation in the game can play by situating the player-avatar relationship differently. Alec Charles argues that this type of gameplay constructs an alternative but real subjectivity. And insofar as the gamer increasingly experiences the virtual world as her primary reality, then that alternative subjectivity may come to represent the player's dominant sense of self. Sherry Turkle seems to agree, situating the gaming as an exploration of players' identity multiplicity. Spending such an extended time focusing on such an environment, or as Peter Bayless calls it, being in the game world, the player experiences a, quote, communicatively mediated sense of being present in the game world. The player knows that they are playing the game, but consciously they realize their avatar is a separately embodied character. So the game becomes this place where the player communicates, and the computer, as David Gunkel remarks, quote, actively participates in communicative exchanges as a kind of additional agent and or interactive co-conspirator. The player does not just look at the avatar, but also through the avatar. The player is both conscious of the avatar's surroundings and their own, a double perspective. The player is neither just the avatar and just the player or the avatar, and is simply an observer of the screen. It is, as Zizek says, a false image that has been constructed, but is also one that the player sees through, experiences interactivity with. While they are still conscious of their own corporeal body, they, as Zizek mentions, they feel through this digital representation in a way that is nonetheless true. The digital other that explores the screen is only other insofar as the player becomes divided, both self and other. Although the avatar and the players are both the same, the avatar remains other insofar as it is not the player. Outside of the self, existing in the temporal and spatial projections of the post-apocalyptic game world, the other that inhabits the game world is the player, in the player's stead, remains alien to the corporeal player, an alien avatar in an alien world. As the avatar is the true player of the game, the subject immersed within the world and engaged within the narrative of the game world, the game communicates to the corporeal player through the player's other, the avatar. The avatar becomes the post for which the player might explore the boundaries of the avatar's perception, a postal node in this network of self in which the player corresponds. So since I've dragged Fallout around, used lots of images from it to situate this larger kind of theoretical construct, let me conclude with a short reflection on the actual post-apocalyptic games. In contrast to the anxiety of the real world that we live in, the post-apocalyptic RPG places the avatar, and thus the agent of postal correspondence of the player, in an impossible temporal projection where all apocalyptic narratives have already come to pass. In a world ravaged by death and destruction emerges this journey that is after the end. One that, through the correspondence between the player and avatar, communicates the very possibility of future, the negation of finality. Ironically enough, the post-apocalypse expands rather than contracts horizons. Openness to future is restored. The journey of the post-apocalyptic role-playing game here can see not as temporally post-apocalypse, but the relief of anxiety in the face of the current ethos of spatially post-revelation regarding the end. Thank you.